where we focus our energy is what grows. So focus your energy on the things that really draw you in. And that's a great way to start, because then you'll start to see things happening all the time that you're like, whoa, this is crazy. I get that all the time from clients. This is crazy. Can you believe it? I even get it from my family. I'm like, no, it's not crazy.
So Beckett, I am so excited to have you back on the show to chat again with me. I know we talked not too long ago a lot about human design and gene keys, and we had so much fun, and you used such intriguing language about quantum concepts that I'm so excited to have you back today to kind of go down the quantum rabbit hole a little bit for those who aren't familiar with that concept or those words, that language. I know we had fun talking about contemplation and people needing to understand that. So quantum falls into that category for me. So thank you so much for joining me again. How have you been? Like the last couple months have been a whirlwind for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. You're right. That contemplation, that's funny. That came up again this week with a client. She's like, I like contemplation. I'm like, I know. It's okay. But yeah, it's been a crazy whirlwind. I know the energy with the planet, you know, everybody's feeling it. I know people around me, even myself, are having some massive changes. A lot of people I know getting divorced, a lot of people leaving jobs, a lot of people, you know, just having some major shifts. And I think that just speaks to where we are in this awakening process and in the energies of the planet. So for me, it's been crazy busy, but crazy good. You know, I've shifted a lot of things and got good things, but it's crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah. Same. I got COVID. That was fun for a month. And, yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. But yeah, it seems like so much has happened in the last few months. So, yeah, crazy stuff. So I'm really excited to be talking today about all things quantum. So Beckett, maybe we can start off by, in your own words, can you kind of give us an idea? I mean, speak to us like a third grader. If someone's using the language of quantum in your own words, how would you summarize what that means, what we're talking about, or what we're exploring?
I think the easiest way to think about it is, and how I try to break it down is, everything is energy. Everything. Right? So if everything is energy, then everything is bumping and affecting energy. Like if you see a sound wave. So quantum, to me, quantum is trying to explain that to all of us, of our connection to everything else and how we're interacting with it. Right? That's why you have quantum entanglement, you have quantum 3D, 5D, all these other terms that people are like, what are you talking about? That's why there is no past, present, or future. Do you know what I mean? Everything is happening right now as it is in an energetic field. And so when you say that, people tend to get it a lot easier than saying, you know, like, your past is happening right now as your future's happening, as your present's happening. They're like, what?
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you could go in depth, but I mean, what do you think? How do you describe quantum?
So I'm curious. This is a question I've had. I've heard and I've watched shows like on Gaia about quantum physics, and, you know, I kind of try to absorb as much as I can, but I'd be curious your thought on this. So whenever I hear them talk about this, and especially I know you know human design language, where they're talking about the neutrinos and the particles and, you know, all the, you know, just things in the atmosphere, and that these retain or hold information. So whenever I hear someone talk about quantum, in my mind, I don't know if you're familiar with like Taoist beliefs, where it's like the Tao is like can't be explained. It's like all things and ever present. Also, it makes me think about the Akashic Records, because isn't that kind of like the Akashic Records are this energy field that is past, present, future, holds information. So yeah, like when I think about it, I'm like, is this like the same thing as what we're kind of exploring when we talk about the Tao and the Akasha and stuff like that?
Yeah, it totally is. Because, right, the Akasha is all of consciousness. Everything that ever was, everything that ever will be, everything that's ever been is recorded in the Akasha, right? That's why you can go and pull out a past life or learn something that you've learned. It's all there in the Akashic Records. And so, right, you can't kill energy. We've learned that. You know, science is now catching up and realized they've proved that your consciousness leaves your body. They've also are still trying to figure out where does consciousness live, because it doesn't live in your brain.
Yeah.
You know, where everybody thinks it does. So it's like, well, if it's not in my brain and it's not, where is it?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's all, and that's why I say it's all energy. So if you look at it and you realize I can't kill energy, and I really, you can't even really create it. You're tapping into it, right? Like you're creating different wavelengths in some way, but you're really just tapping into different energetic fields. So I try to explain to people quantum is really like, think of it like a radio station or a cable station. There's like 200-300 stations going at the same time. But you're not watching all of those, right? You're just tuned in to station 99.1. Right? Which doesn't mean that the others aren't going. They are. Right. It's just your frequency is on that frequency. And so that's what you're experiencing. So when I break it down that way, people tend to get it a little easier because they're like, oh, okay, I get that. Right? It doesn't mean that the other radio stations or cable stations aren't on. They are. Yeah. You're just not participating in them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's interesting because I have a concept that I've shared, you know, when people talk about what's going on in the world and, the conflict and the contrast. And, one thing I've always said is it's like a movie. It's like which movie or channel are you going to tune into? What frequency, vibration are you going to tune into? Are you going to watch the one where, they're coming out to get you and you need to stockpile up on weapons and, the world is coming to an end, or are you watching a different kind of movie or channel? So I love that example that you described in that way of there being all of the channels and just kind of noticing what frequency we kind of tune into. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. And that's why, yes, if that's true, right? Like manifestation is really tuning into the frequency of that which you want. But then if you want to go even deeper, like Abraham Hicks will say, I don't know if you know, I'm assuming you know Abraham Hicks, but they're like, there really is no in the universe. Which then makes people go, what? Because really when you're saying no to something, you're saying yes to it, right? Right. So even when you're like protesting war, like people, you're really bringing the frequency of war in.
You're giving energy to it.
Right, which means that you're actually adding to it, not, taking it down. And people, that can really mess with people because they're like, well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? It's like, because whatever you focus on is the energy you're putting into something. That's why there's a no. Even if you're thinking, I'm not for this, you're focusing on it and adding energy to it. So therefore, that's why you can manifest things you don't want as easily as you can manifest things you do want.
Yeah. Oh, and that's such a hard concept for so many, for the world, because there's that part of us that feels like, that righteous, I'm helping, it's a cause, but it can be hard to see detachment as a more positive, response. And then of course we could go down the rabbit hole of like spiritual bypassing. Right. There's so much there. So, okay, roll it back, Cassandra. All right. So quantum. I want to kind of play with the topic of, when we're talking about spirituality and, people, oh, the woo woo thing or the unusual thing. I think that it's so great, all of the language that's coming out now about quantum topics that are starting to sort of blur the lines a bit in, okay, are we talking science? Or are we talking spirituality? Can you help us give examples of ways to our listener, who maybe haven't watched all the Gaia television shows I have, trying to absorb this. But, can you give examples of ways in which, you can look at quantum language speaking of things that are relatable to spiritual concepts?
Yeah, they're entangled, right? Like if you look at sacred geometry, right? That's mathematical in a way and scientific because you're looking at symbols that are, right? The triangle that you can have an equation for that. But yet, if you look at nature, all things fall into sacred geometry in the way they're created. Right. Yeah. So there's a spirituality there and there's an essence to it. And I don't think, sometimes we try to split it and we can, but they're really entangled. They really are one. And I think science is catching up, I always say, to spirituality, to understanding that. But like quantum entanglement, like I know there was a project where, and I'm sure people have seen this, they've done it with rice, they've done it with yogurt, they've done it with water, where they separate the yogurt in two different rooms. The rice, two different rooms. And one, they just spoke negative things to the rice to see what would happen. And then they spoke positive things. And it was interesting to see how the things changed. And then they looked at the one where they did the negative, right, where it got moldy and gross, and then separated it again and put it in another room and spoke loving things and thought, did this change the rice in the other room? Yeah. And it did. Wow. Yeah. So there's quantum entanglement, right? So like they're in two separate rooms but they're connected energetically. So that one set of rice that they started to speak lovingly to also felt it in the next room, and it changed the energetic frequency. Just like there was a study shown where they took, I don't remember what it was, 50 meditators. It wasn't a lot, and stuck them outside of Washington, D.C. to meditate. And then they looked at the crime rate. Yeah. They looked at the violence. They looked to see, did it go up or went down? And they found out it went significantly down for the few hours those meditators were outside of the city meditating and putting that energy in there. Wow. Wow. That's so interesting. When I started my spiritual journey, I had a mentor who was telling us it was so important for us to kind of protect our energy. I know this doesn't seem like it's related, but I promise it is. And she, taught us how to kind of call upon Archangel Michael. And, there was this whole, experience where, you're asking Archangel Michael to cut any energetic connections, to other people that aren't yours to carry, and all this stuff, and said that this is for especially anyone intuitive that's working with a lot of individuals, that it's a helpful practice to have. And I was like, okay. And I mean, I honestly at first was like, all right, I guess this is important. I'll do it, but I don't think I really got what I was doing. It's like just trying to picture all these cords coming out of me and, and then when I was watching a video on quantum entanglement and I was like, nobody told me that's the same thing, but I think that that's what essentially it is that as our energy, because everything is energy, engages and flows and goes and connects in different ways, that sometimes when we're connecting with people, that our energy kind of gets entangled with their energy, and essentially all you're doing is kind of just resetting. So I stopped using language like cut the cords and strands and and I was like, just clear any entanglements, energetic entanglements.
And that language, I was like, okay, I think I get that. I tend to want to, which is crazy to even say this out loud as someone who reads the Akashic Records and talks about galactic heritage, but I do tend to be logical. So I felt a little more like I was grasping what I was doing better when I heard of the concept of quantum entanglement. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because you, right there, two things. You disassociate, you're like, well, I can't be logical and yet talk about galactic. Or, you know what I mean? Like Akashic, but you can't, right? It's the two can live together. And the other thing about the protection, that's something I haven't personally subscribed to, because going back to like what we talked about, if you're telling the universe, I need to protect my energy, you're telling the universe, I need to draw energy to me to protect myself from. So instead, what I do is I don't do the protection. I do more of a heart-centered push my love and light out. Do you know what I mean? To the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
Because if there is no in the universe, I don't want to protect. I actually want to exude more love. I want to exude more compassion. So I tend to focus on that more than I don't do protection, because and I have it as an issue. I'm an intuitive too. I do the same thing, but it's like, I don't want to call that energy into me, right? And say, oh my God, I'm in a bubble. I got to protect, because now I'm telling the universe, okay, give me something to protect myself from.
Yeah, right. I don't want that. You're making that placeholder for someone to play that role. Okay. Right. All right. Well, I hear you.
And that's another form of quantum entanglement, right? You know what I mean? And when you look at the old shamans and stuff, a lot of them say that, that's why words and what you use, they're casts, they're spells, right? That's why you call it spelling.
Yeah.
Spelling is because what you're saying is what you're drawing to you. So I think the easiest thing for people to really start working with quantum is, what am I putting my energy into? What am I focusing on? Even if it's negative. And I'll give you a funny example. I was teaching my mom how to manifest.
Yeah.
She's a big skeptic. Well, she was a big skeptic. And so I was like, okay, just work with me. And I said, think of somebody you want to call you. And so she called me like a day later, and she's just like, oh, this manifestation doesn't work. And I said, why doesn't it work? And she said, all I kept thinking about was, I'll change the person's name. I don't want Grace to call me. I don't want Grace to call me. And she goes, guess who called me? I said, Grace. And she said, yes. And see, it didn't work. I said, congratulations, you're a master manifester. You know what I mean? And she's just like, but it was a great lesson, right? To see, like, we can draw in what we don't want, even when we think we're doing the opposite of it. And so she was thinking, I'm going to focus on what I don't want, which means I'll draw on what I do. But the universe doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Right? That's the quantum. The universe only knows what you put out. So it went, okay, you don't want this person to call you, they're going to call you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, and I know, like, I know that there's, once again, goes back to me watching and trying to absorb in my brain, not, I'm not quite there, but I also found, when we're talking about like quantum concepts, it was very interesting, the observer effect. Have you heard of that? Like, because I feel like
the observer effect can affect what it's observing.
So that's kind of like what we're talking about too, it was something like the matter shifted from particle or wave based on whether or not it was being observed or not, which kind of goes again into that language, I'm assuming, of where you're putting your energy, or where your focus is on. Is that,
because, right, you're only, and here's things that will really blow people's mind, right? It's like this old adage of, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, did it make a sound?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The answer is no.
Okay.
Right? And people are like, what? Yeah, it did, just because we didn't hear it. No, because there was no observer there to hear the sound. The sound is being produced because your ear can hear it.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Not necessarily because the tree is falling. So the observer effect is and this will really, I got it. So if everything behind me doesn't exist until I observe it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Which is why I think we talk about everything kind of being illusionary to,
Right.
to some, yeah.
That's why
Wow.
when you look at something, if you concentrate on it, like, I'll tell people, go outside and just ask the wind to blow.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Wow.
And a lot of times people will come back and go, well, all of a sudden the wind kicked up and it was completely, there was no wind. And I'm like, it's that observer effect. It's understanding that your energy is affecting that which you see, you smell, you taste, you listen to. All of that comes through this human body we have, and the observer effect, like we're talking about quantum entanglement, my energy is bouncing off of that energy. So really, you don't even, this microphone doesn't exist unless I'm observing it. I see it, so it's there.
Yeah.
But people are like, what?
Yeah. I love it. And it's interesting because when once again, going back to my earlier, which I say earlier, but really this whole spiritual awakening experience for me has been very sudden. People are like, oh, I've been doing this 15 years. I'm like, 3? So when I say earlier, I mean like last week. No. But,
it's okay.
My soul was like, I'm an Aries. We want to get things done. So I'm like, we'll just procrastinate for 41 years and then we'll just like get it done last minute. So that's how my soul rolls. So earlier,
you're all fire.
Yeah. I've got all the cardinal things. That's all the cardinal energy. Yeah. But a lot of ambition and fire. But yeah, so originally, like earlier on, people were talking about illusionary, and like, I wasn't one that watched The Matrix and got it at all. I was one of those people that was like, this is what the hell is going on. So the whole concept of illusionary was kind of missed, over me. But one thing I thought to myself in it before I heard of quantum concepts is, and I was telling my husband, I said, okay, so really my logical mind trying to wrap around this, the only thing that I can come up with and think of is it's interesting that everything that exists and what we know it exists only because we've called it that or created that in a sense. So it's like, I told him, I said, why is a tree called a tree? Because somewhere along the line, someone decided it was a tree. Someone said, hey, that's a house. We would be calling trees houses. So I was like, okay, so it's illusionary in the concept that our reflection, our perspective, what we're putting out there, makes it what it is. But the idea of quantum physics and the observer effect makes a little more sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is hard. I forget what it was. It was a book I read, which I love, or a doc, where this guy took all the animals on the planet and showed you their world according to their eyes and what they see. Right? So some can only see some of the colors. There's some species out there that see colors way more than us. Way brighter.
Yeah.
So I think we get lost in understanding and thinking our perception of this world is the only, and that your perception of this world is the same as mine, but yet that's impossible.
Yeah.
Right? How you see things, how you have experiences, how your eyes, look at things, all that, all your sensory, I don't have taste or smell, so I'm not experiencing that in my world. You are, but that doc or that book of all these animals really kind of helped me to put things in perspective and realize, that's why we're all experiencing this planet, everything down to the tiniest little insect on such a varied level. That the observer effect that makes sense then, because you can only see things as you see them through the filters you have, and that goes for everything else on the planet. So, what do animals call trees? I don't know. You know what I mean? They might just say this big, and then to ants, a blade of grass has to look like a tree or a cliff or a mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And that's where I think it would be so fun to okay, rabbit hole. But, one thing I find is interesting is sometimes when you're talking about intuitive gifts or different things to people, they're kind of like, okay, but one thing I've always found interesting going back to the animals is all the incredible things animals can do that have to do with senses and energetics, like the whales or the birds and the magnetic, pull and connection. And it's like, okay, so if the animals can do these things that are like extraordinary, bees are another one. Like, why is it so unheard of that we could have connection to those senses? And so when you were talking about like what's the animal, think of the tree and stuff, I'm like, my brain instantly was like, to like really sense the vibrations and the colors and the, you talked about how the animals, some of them see differently. I mean, let's just shout out to the cats. As a crazy cat lady, I've heard cats can see auras. And I know they see things, much different than we do. So it's all just interesting. I love it. And I think that my son is on it. Well, the word now is neurodivergent. He was diagnosed with Asperger's, though. So his senses have been heightened, which causes adjustment issues and things to navigate and work through. But I told him once, because he was describing, he's 16, can hardly believe it, getting his license soon. And he was trying to describe what it looks like to him driving at night with like his senses the way they are. And I told him, I said, man, I wish I was a skilled artist. And I told him, I was like, if you have a way of putting that in some display or concept to imagine what it would be like, to see through his eyes, to experience those heightened senses. And I do think the human species is evolving, and that we will be opening up more of those connections, our brain capacity to our senses and things over time. But yeah, it's interesting to consider. And I think it's something we forget is that, like you said, not everybody experiences things like you experience them.
Yeah, and that's a big key. And I think, side note, an AI tool might help him to just be able to type that in there and create his world might be fantastic. Because, autistic, Asperger's, all that, they're they're really here to teach us. It's not that they're abnormal, we're abnormal. They're actually more normal. Do you know what I mean? They're more in tune, just like the animals. Like the animals are living, like Abraham Hicks says, in the vortex, right? They're tuned in, turned in, tapped on. They're in the moment. And animals, like if you go out and watch a squirrel jump from a branch or a bird land on, they're not thinking like a human would do. Should I jump over there? Is that going to catch me? Will that branch break? And if it breaks, am I going to break all my little legs? Like, they don't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't. But, that's our journey here, to remember who we are and understand that we have those gifts, and to learn from the animals and learn from people like your son and the crystalline children coming in. And, the crystalline children coming in don't get it. They look at us and they're like, what is wrong with you people? Like, why can't you see this? You know what I mean? But that's their job coming in, is to teach us and remind us that you're right. These gifts aren't magical. They're normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How we live is really abnormal.
Yeah.
And people will look and they're like, what? It's like, like we're supposed to be experiencing the magical and be in the vortex, so to speak. And, using these gifts on the daily and understanding and navigating, life would be so much more easier and fun.
Yeah.
Not saying we wouldn't have difficulties, but we would get it more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love that suggestion you gave for AI. Nobody throws stones. But I am definitely, I'm one of those people that so when I connect and I meditate, like there's all sort of incredibly detailed otherworldly things that are going on. And let me say, I just wish I, was the artist that could get my, whatever it is, pen, paper, charcoal, paint, whatever, and pull all of what's in here out on paper. But I can't, Beckett, I can't draw. I mean, even my handwriting is like scary, awful. And so for a creative, I mean, really, the universe was like, yeah, we'll just, we don't need to worry about that. And I'm like, but I wish I could put those visuals and introduce them, materialize them. And so I love the tools that I can now play with AI. And I mean, it's not easy, honestly. I think, it's like, I'll tell you, I spend forever, like, because it's like I see it here. So it's like getting it just how I'm seeing it can take some time. You don't just plug it in and AI is like, here you go. And it's perfect. Yeah. But I know there's a lot of people that,
Listen, I'm an artist. I'm an abstract artist. I always see things in my brain before I paint them. But even I use AI tools, and I've introduced it to friends and clients as an assistant. AI is a great way to take your creativity to a new level, but you got to learn it, right? You got to learn how to put in prompts. You got to learn. It's not going to just spit one thing out and go, it's here to destroy things, just like everything else. Just like the internet, right? Everybody was scared of that. It's going to take over the world. Like, this is just our next evolution. So I love AI. I love AI tools. I love it. I use it as an assistant, so to speak, and to work with things. And I'm an artist. I still paint. I still do my things, but I love that these tools are allowing people like you and other people to get more creative, or like your son, who may struggle, you know what I mean? And really be able to create in ways and express themselves. So again, it goes back to this quantum entanglement. What movie are you tuning into? AI takes over the world and destroys humanity, or we coexist with AI and create new levels of creativity and new ways of doing things that benefit all.
Yeah. And as someone that's talking to the ETs, like, I'm all for, the positive development of, those tools that can help us become a more advanced civilization that, can get out into the cosmos. So,
right. You know what I mean? Exactly. I mean, I'm all about that too. I was able to, I'll tell you a story. Last couple Halloweens, call in an actual ET UFO and have it recorded. You know what I mean? Where I said, if you're communicating with me, go straight up. And it does in the video. It goes straight up. You know what I mean? And it's like, yes. So it's, to me, it's exciting. This, where we're headed is exciting. And fear is just, again, what do you want to be afraid of? There's nothing to be afraid of. I always say this to people. I'm like, if you don't think that there's other living human forms and we're it, that doesn't even logically doesn't even make sense. And B, if they wanted to take us out, they could have destroyed this planet millions of years ago.
And I mean, I think that everything we're talking about today with quantum physics and quantums, it's like that is showing, that there is so much beyond this Earth planet. And there's so much more possibility. And I absolutely love it. I love it.
Yeah, telepathy. They knew what I was saying, I showed my friends the video and I sent it to my mom, and they're like, "Oh my God." So we all can communicate telepathically.
Yeah.
It's a natural gift, except most people don't believe in it or know it. And that's a whole nother quantum topic.
Yeah, exactly. I want to do one of those CE5 things. Have you heard of Stephen? That's what it was? Oh my gosh. Okay. See, all right. There's talk about quantum stuff and stuff coming up because it keeps coming up for me. And something else happened. Like I think a video popped up of someone and their CE5. And I was like, I'm going to download the app. And I did. Yeah. And then I put it aside. And now I am thinking about it. And that's what you did. And so I'm like, okay, that's a sign. I'm going to have to. Yeah.
Do it. My friend had it. We went up to I was in Arizona at the time. We went up to the ruins, the ancient ruins in Flagstaff on Halloween night.
So jealous.
Yeah, it was, and we went up there and I was like, her and I have been wanting, she's done a lot of this. She's done a lot of CE5. She's gone to a lot of alien conventions, whatever. So she's like, let's go do this. So we did, and it was amazing. We did it, and and what's interesting was I couldn't see the craft without my iPhone.
Oh, wow.
It was almost like they wanted me in a way to record it because you can hear her talking in the background. She wasn't even paying attention because she's had so many experiences. Yeah. But I took my phone down and you can see it, but you put my phone up and it's there as clear as day.
Wow. That's
so neat. I recorded it, and then eventually when I put it down, it came a little bit closer, but that was it. And so now I have this to show people, and it's like, it was cool. Now I just want to do it again. So to your point, do it. His whole method is amazing. You'll have an amazing experience. And I love it because it really kind of cracks everybody open and makes you realize, to your point, this is quantum.
Yeah.
This has been going on around us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love it. I'm going to have to do that. Awesome. Oh, goodness. Well, this has been so fun. We've had so many fun conversations here. So I just want to give the opportunity before we kind of close out. So what advice would you give to the person listening who, is either on the fence or wants to learn more, or how to get started, or how this information can help kind of just wrap it all up and spit out some guidance for us?
Well, I think the easiest thing is, I always tell people, go towards what you're drawn to. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Some people are drawn to aliens. Some people are drawn to Egypt. Some people are drawn to past life experiences. And you've mentioned it a couple times. I've watched it. Gaia is a great resource for beginners to really dive in all different kinds of topics: plant medicine, sacred geometry, aliens. Whatever your thing is, and that's okay, whatever it is, but start there, because if you're already interested in it, you're going to want to dive deeper into it. Okay, how does quantum's in everything. It just has become a fancy word that people don't understand now. Like you said, right? Cutting cords, quantum entanglement. You know what I mean? It's like, that's okay. And what I tell people, especially if you're sensitive or intuitive or empathic, a great way to clean your energy field without actually having to do cord cutting is take a salt bath. Pour some Epsom salt in there. I take one about once a week just to wash your energetic field off. And that really helps. And you'll find that really, you'll feel refreshed, and maybe write down how you're feeling before you take the bath and how you feel after. Because once you start tuning into these nuances and these gifts, they grow. Mm-hmm. Because now you're tapping into the energy, right? Where we focus our energy is what grows. So focus your energy on the things that really draw you in. And that's a great way to start, because then you'll start seeing things happening all the time that you're like, whoa, this is crazy. I get that all the time from clients. This is crazy. Can you believe it? I even get it from my family. I'm like, no, it's not crazy. This is how we're supposed to live.
Yeah, I love it. So, and can you tell us a little bit more about how people can work with you?
Sure. You can work with me. Just reach out to me. You can find me on my YouTube channel. I'm on IG, Beckett Johnson Co. I use the same name for everything. You can email me. I start out usually using human design gene keys to get people to tap into their energetic work. We talked about that. because I think it's a great baseline to start and get people understanding. Because when you tell them that, they're like, their mind is always like, what?
Yeah.
You know, and then you can dive deeper into the quantum. So YouTube or Instagram are the easiest ways to find me and hit me up.
Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure this has been so entertaining for our listeners. Hope you see the many ways in which it influences our lives and our everyday reality. And until next time, have a lovely day. Bye.